show you this one?
Shawty's be like, Vegas ain't ready for us. Like Vegas ain't seen 5 hoes before.
I reminded. His voice. So, that's the part that kills me.
5 hoes before.
Like, Vegas ain't seen 5 hoes before. He's like, what the fuck? He's like,
Vegas ain't seen 5 hoes before. Welcome, damn, bro, you almost shook the whole.
no lights. No lights. Oh.
All of the lights. Welcome back to another episode of the PO3 Podcast. My name is Marcus Marx.
That's John.
And
I don't know the words. There you go. What's up, y'all?
Oh, you know
back.
what? That'll actually get you copyright. Like, it's a flag if you do it, even if you do the melody with your mouth. Do it.
Sorry.
Do it. Are you playing with your... What are you doing? Look. He's tasting it. I'm cutting that out. I'm going to cut that part out.
What part?
I don't want to talk about penis in the beginning of the podcast.
Ever again?
Yeah, never again. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of the PO3 Podcast. Hey, so what did you want to talk about? Like Vegas ain't seen 5 hoes before.
He's like, what the fuck?
It's a meme. You gotta. His voice is what.
He's about like Vegas.
I don't know. What did he say in the first part?
Shoulders be like, Vegas ain't ready for us. Like Vegas, he's seen 5 hoes before. True. I'm be like Gomer Pals.
Wait, what?
When he kills himself and Gunny in the bathroom.
Who?
I'm already in a world.
In a world
Of shit. Gomer
know.
Pyle. Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, okay.
Jesus. Start it over.
Private Pile. I don't know the little speech that he gives in the bathroom.
Oh, I don't know either. Just anyway.
Pile. That's messed up, dude.
Gomer Pyle.
Yeah. Anyway, we left off and you wanted to talk about something. I don't know if it's...
Free speech.
Nah, the Korea thing.
That was after the free speech.
Okay, go. All right, shoot.
Well, do you feel as if though free speech is currently under attack?
Yeah, I do.
And the reason I bring that up is because, well, we're up here exercising that ability
Mm.
and that's constitutionally protected right. And I was listening to a couple different podcasts throughout the past couple weeks, and they've talked about it a lot. And so I figured it'd be kind of something cool to talk about on here since we're obviously using this platform to discuss what we think is relevant. And, I just wanted to take your take on it. How do you feel like it's being attacked right now?
I mean, do you want me to be straight up about it? You want me to hold back a little bit? Or
I want you to say what you think
my
is...
genuine opinion. Because
Yeah.
my genuine opinion, and not to and I don't want to sugarcoat it, it's just I feel like everyone's too fucking sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everyone's just being sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a time and a place for it, but people are they're being some pussies right now. I feel that's really what I feel like. I understand that there are certain groups that want to be heard and get their message out there. Fine, okay. But there is a line that needs to be drawn. Like now it's like you can't say anything anymore without getting canceled. You can't say nothing. And I feel like...
Hashtag cancel culture.
I just feel like... I mean, what does this world come to? You know what I mean? Like this...
So actually on the way here, I was listening to a podcast uh, with Jordan Peterson.
Mm.
But I didn't catch the name of the individual that he was interviewing, but this guy was from the UK. And he was saying that, one thing that I like hearing from people from other countries is they're real quick to say, we have freedom of speech, but it isn't constitutionally protected like it is in the United States. So we don't have that protection. So we're extremely vulnerable when it comes to that, right? And so for me, it's just kind of like, I like when they say that because it's kind of like they recognize, because they don't have that we have, and yet we are what feels like willingly allowing the government to suppress that, But he was basically saying that the stats he used were from 2014 to 2019, and that within those 5 years, the police in Great Britain investigated 120,000 non-criminal, I don't want to say discriminatory, offensive language laws. And so, like 120,000 interviews in 5 years for me saying something and you taking offense to it, and then you calling the police and then having to come do an investigation.
120,000 cases?
120 in 5 years.
Oh my God.
Like,
that's a lot of bitching and moaning.
That's a lot of bitching and moaning, and that's a lot of like waste of time.
Yeah, it could have been allocated towards real crimes.
To something else. Anything else. you know what I'm saying?
But a slip and fall at the stove.
Yeah, and they're constantly trying to pass more. Like, I think the term that they refer to the person phoning in not as a complainant but as a victim. And so he's like, that paints a picture that there's already something being done to them.
They feel entitled to the victim's mentality.
And I think that he said they used this within that one paragraph of that section of law where it was subjective to the victim. So whatever they determined was offensive. There isn't
arbitrary, right? It was just arbitrarily decided that I'm offended by this because...
And it's whatever you deem as offensive. There is no, okay, it has to exceed this. It has to call for this for it to be considered offensive. It's just whatever you feel was offensive. You can call the cops on me and they will have to come
And
out here.
that's where it gets slippery with this mental health thing, because the one card that they can play is it's affecting my mental health, and that it's causing me distress, and it's forcing me to have anxiety. And I'm not like bashing anxiety, but it's giving them an excuse to use that. They're using that as an excuse, anxiety and all this other stuff. Because I feel like a lot of people just front, like they're just bullshitting. There's really nothing wrong with them. In a lot of cases, they just want the attention. So they cry wolf, right? And then they start coming up with these things. That's exactly why I'm like, dude, people are they're acting like pussies if they're really not, but they're really acting like it and displaying that. Like you said, like they're playing the victim and stuff. And I feel like as a law, like you got to draw the line somewhere, because it's becoming an inconvenience. And
well, now we're seeing, at least in my opinion, we're seeing that now in the States. Them trying to pass a lot of stuff, and it's like, where does the line end? You know what I'm saying? Like,
but whose job is it to decide that? Like, shouldn't be any? I'm sure the general consensus, though, overall, is that yes, I feel like it is out of control right now. That should be the
being offended by
yes.
stuff. Oh yeah, yes, I would
the
say
victim's mentality. I feel like cancel culture is.
I don't like it. I don't like that people are offended on others' behalf. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, what if they're not offended by it, but you're taking offense for them? Like, that makes zero sense to me. I'm like, I'm not saying...
Can you give me an example of a particular case, maybe?
Well, let's just say you're a Hispanic man and somebody made a Hispanic comment toward you, or said something that could be portrayed as offensive, but you didn't find it offensive.
Now, does this fall in the category of racism, though? Because that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about like, he didn't like the shoes I was wearing, so I'm gonna make a complaint on that, and he's affecting my character because he didn't like my outfit.
I think it's all kind of boiling in the same pot, honestly. I feel like the term racism, honestly, is an oversimplified term now. I feel that it's overused to... If I say something you don't like, I'm going to be a bigot. I'm going to be a racist because I didn't agree with your particular set of views or values.
But there is a lot of cases of blatant, obvious racism, though.
Can you point me to one?
I've experienced them, dude. Like
Well,
working on job sites with certain people, like in construction, there's a lot of white people, there's a lot of Mexican people, and a couple people in between. A lot of cases, dude, I've worked with people that just
Okay, so
use the N-word on a regular basis. I'm not even kidding.
now I don't agree with the use of that word.
I'm just saying,
at
no, that
all,
was a
but-
blatant display of racism.
But okay, so to me that paints a picture about that individual, not about society as a whole.
No, and of course, I can't say that, oh, now all people, like, fuck white people because they're all no, it was just this individual because and that goes the same for policemen. Like somebody, if a cop, commits an unrightful act upon a certain individual and that individual loses his life, a lot of people are so quick to say, fuck the police. But really, it's just that one person. That doesn't mean that all the cops are bad.
Yeah, and then, well, especially if it's a white cop that kills a person of color, people are real quick to say that it was a racially charged.
And
You know,
it's hard to know that until you investigate it. But on the outside of it, it looks bad.
But I think all of that stuff because look, like, let's just, things happen. Whether the cop's decision was right or wrong is open for interpretation, but to automatically conclude that the reason that it happened was solely because that officer was racist is kind of like that makes zero sense to me. It's like, how could you draw that conclusion just because it happened? It automatically, and then now with the media just runs with this, it's almost like you're guilty until you're proven innocent, in that regard. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying there's not racist people. I'm not saying there's not racist cops, but by and large, it's, to me,
Yeah, you're not.
I've received countless training throughout a year on non-biased policing.
And I feel like in this case, you're not guilty by association.
But, and from my perspective, I am, because I wear a uniform.
I don't think so though, because that would be saying that you are a part of that group.
No, but what I'm saying is,
And belief system.
It's the way it's currently being projected outward. Is if you're wearing the uniform, you're part of the problem.
That's what I'm saying though, is that you're not
No, but the
a
way
part of the problem.
I would say that I'm not, but
Exactly.
But the perspective is that I am. And
Yeah,
that's
I get what you're
yeah.
saying. I get what you're saying.
And so it's just like, that part sucks. It's like, can you name another occupation why just by the clothes that you wear for that occupation, you're automatically demonized? And I'm not even going to say that because I don't want to go there, but like, no, I won't say it. But it's just like, I was like, it's almost like you're dehumanized as an individual. They take your individuality out of it, and therefore they only see the uniform. You're racist. You're a bigot. You're trained to do X, Y, and Z.
They think you're a robot. In other words,
essentially,
they forget that you're a human being.
That
with
I have my own
emotions.
set of values. I have my own set of principles. Although we are required to follow the law, it's like, damn, dude, it's like we're not racist. We get a lot of training on not to police in that particular manner, but that doesn't exclude those that do have ill intentions.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't make it right for anybody to do it.
Yeah, I mean, people get through dude. It's a crazy background check you have to go through. Like, they contact your neighbors. When I did my thing, they were not, hey, can you call so and so, let them know I'm here. See if you can get a hold of them because I got to ask them some questions. And it's basically checking your moral character. Like, hey, this is what he put down on paper, but have you experienced cops coming yelling, drinking excessively? Like, have you noticed things from your neighbor? Because they want to make sure, like, whoever they decide to say, hey, we'll give you the title of a peace officer, that you're of good moral character, you have good moral judgment, and now people still fall through the cracks for that. But to say because a few did it, that therefore all, that'd be the same as police saying, well, this particular group or another, a couple did some rags, so therefore all of them are bad. That's the same thing. And so I don't know how we got onto this particular thing, but
freedom of speech.
But yeah,
I feel like freedom mentality.
I feel like freedom of speech, going back to that though, is severely under attack. Like, you can't, if what you're saying in your opinion doesn't jive with somebody else, they're real quick to call you out and be offended by it. And it's like, but when we talk about sensitive topics, there's always going to be some sorts, you risk the chance in offending somebody, but it's a discussion that needs to be had. You know what I'm saying? And that's how
Mhm.
we get through these problems is by talking about it. But if I can't talk about it because you're automatically gonna be offended by my words or somebody's words, and then disregard everything I have to say, and then even try to get, you know, me canceled or whatever. It's like we're chasing our tail. We're not gaining any ground, you know. And I feel like freedom of speech is like aside from you like it being so you can say what you want about your government. I'm just talking about in general. Like you need to be able to talk to discuss problems, and if you can't do that, then what do we have? We're just gonna become an archaic scene.
Yeah, it's like the line is or like the hallway is just the walls are closing in when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to conversation. Like there's no room to budge at all anymore, and it feels like it just I don't know, dude. It's just not a good direction we're headed in.
It feels it feels to me for being 2021, we should be
Way
this
past
should
this.
be yeah, we should be so far beyond this.
And
And
what do you think is contributing to that though? Like, do you think it is all this technology and the fact that everything is just so quickly accessible and everything's just at the tips of our fingers, like social media and everything?
I would say that's probably a
Like people
good
are just overexposed to everything. And there's
yeah.
so much negativity out there.
Well, in my opinion, I always get these little Facebook debates with people in the comment
Uh,
sections of something. And I feel that people are really quick to dismiss the other opposing argument, you know? And I forgot where I heard this, but when let's say you and I are having a discussion, a debate or some sort, you know, I should be listening to you for the sake of listening and understanding what you're saying. But typically what happens is I'm listening to you so I can formulate a rebuttal. So I'm not even listening to what you have to say on a fundamental value.
you're just waiting for the
I'm just,
rebuttal.
I'm just okay. He said this. So how can I refute that? You know, and then you don't get anywhere with that.
You're
kind
not
of-
listening. You're just
Yeah, you're just okay. I'm taking what this person's saying. I'm taking what you are saying.
you're
You know,
listening, but you don't hear me.
Exactly. And I think that's a big factor into it. And you can put that into any category. And I feel like not to get into a political discussion, but that's a big thing I see with politics right now is either side doesn't really care about what the other side has to say about a particular issue. They're just trying to prove that they're right and the other side's wrong. And that's the discussion. And it's becoming more the gap is becoming bigger rather than closing in on the issue. We're just getting further apart.
Now
And I think it's a
now
big,
that's something that I wouldn't obviously a lot of people and us as a whole, humanity, we don't have an explanation for as far as why does it feel like everybody is starting to move further apart. You know, it feels like there's inflation, like a national inflation and a worldwide inflation that's happening where everything is just separating rather than coming together. You know, like everybody did on 9/11. You know, like that camaraderie was a lot tighter, and it felt like as a country we were mended, and now I feel like it's the complete opposite. And I don't know if that's due to social media directly, but there's something going on that's causing people to
I would say for that particular situation, it was all had a common enemy.
is exactly, but what now? I mean, I feel like maybe people just straight up probably just got complacent. Things are just too good now. Like
I would agree with you. I mean,
there's
100 times over.
There's no struggle. Like everything is just so easy, and now people feel entitled to that. Like
That's a big thing too.
people feel entitled to like just give me. Like everything, like they don't have to work. And there's a lot of people that still have the mentality of like you work hard, you have to work hard to get what you want. But there's also, I don't know if it's millennials or what, but like there is a section of people that exist that just feel like they're owed that.
They're
They feel
owed
like
that.
they're entitled to the victim's mentality and everything. It's a flawed way of thinking.
Like, I would say that one thing I've been listening to a lot of is how. So Jordan pointed this out in one of his interviews that the media, the big media outlets, like back in the day, you know, like I'm not gonna mention any names, but just think of
CNN.
just big networks, right? In his opinion, they severely underestimated the average viewer's intelligence. And so they would dumb things down and give it to them in a 30-second spoonful and give them, you know, this is what's going on in the world. But we're not going to talk about it a whole lot because you guys are too dumb to understand it anyway. So here's the watered down version of what's going on. And he goes, what we're seeing now is podcasts, no matter who is hosting them, are gaining a lot of traction, and people like having these long form discussions.
Yeah, because they're exposing the real truth and picking apart what is really going
Exactly.
on rather than just brushing over it.
Exactly. And he's like, people are much more much smarter and intelligent than they give them credit for, and people want this information. They want to be able to hear all the sides and make their own opinion about it, not be told this is what it is.
Well, here's maybe why to answer my own question, why people are so sensitive nowadays, and why it seems like things are a lot more negative, and tying that into having social media so quickly accessible, because it's on. You can basically just get everything that you need from your phone, and then if you have TV, that's just more that adds to it. But maybe what's happening is people's true emotions and their real true characters are now being exposed, because now all that stuff is accessible and everybody's seeing that from each other, versus when it wasn't accessible, everyone kind of kept that under wraps, and kept it to themselves, and maybe you'd only hear about it like if you went to a party or something like that and you ran into this type of individual. But now it's just like you're getting these cases in huge bursts and huge numbers, because social media is something that is just millions and millions and millions of people all together at once posting, and it's just like a huge rabbit. It's its own galaxy,
Yeah, exactly.
of
And
personality.
I would say too, the fact that, like you mentioned, we have so much information at our fingertips.
It's overstimulating.
You're getting exposed to stuff that you would never hear about that's happening in New York, or like, it seems like it doesn't matter what the event is, it's all national news, because I can go to Facebook and like a particular TV station that's out of New York or Tennessee or Florida, and I'm going to have that at my fingertips, and then I like it or don't like it, or I'm surprised by what I see, and then I share it. Now, everyone that's in my friend list that doesn't follow that particular network station, they're going to see it. And so I just feel like we're exposed to so much because of, technology is closing the gap between in distance. You know what I'm saying? We could type into something that's happening in the UK right now live, if someone was streaming it, so I think we're just getting exposed to all. I would think it's kind of like how we talked about mental health. It's always been there. It's only now coming to light. I feel like all the bad stuff that's going on, we're getting worse in that regard.
It's always been there.
We're just seeing it more because it's more accessible to us.
I think that is the case. I really do, because you look into history, and there's always been struggle, and there's always been conflict. There's always been war. We've never seen a time better than this, I mean, and I feel like we are at war, but with each other, and it's just not officially declared. I feel like there is something that's going on. Like, dude, how many times have you been out and people are just so quick to engage in argument and conflict? Like, people are shooting each other now way more than they used to, and I like, nobody waves to each other anymore. Like, if somebody's down, like, people are, I feel like, in my opinion, are quicker to kick them now rather than lend a helping hand. And I feel like that's due to complacency again. I feel like things are just way too good now. Like, with lack of struggle comes people that lack character, because they haven't struggled.
Jordan mentioned in one of his podcasts,
third world problems, or first world problems.
That's basically it. That if we could have everything we ever wanted and needed, we would create some sort of chaos to have some sort of unpredictability come into our life. So, like, if you could have everything you needed, I'm not saying you in particular, just society as a whole, if we can have everything we ever wanted and everything we ever needed, we'll go out there and create some sort of chaos to get some change. We want adventure. We're going to go look for something to go get in trouble, go something to do. It's in human nature, and I think that's true, because that, to go what you said, we're all doing pretty well here in the States. Even if you're poor, you're still doing well on a global spectrum. And so we're not grateful. We have too much. We've become
complacent, I feel like.
And to me, that goes into exactly what he said. We're doing all right as a whole, and now we're looking for things to go find problems with.
I think I forget who says this, but they say, like, hard times create hard men create a better world creates weak men, and weak men create a world that's worse off, because there's no struggle. So it's like that cycle needs to happen again, and that cycle we're in the cycle now where things are just too good and there's no struggle, so there's no hard individuals coming out of this, and there's nobody, like, people are growing less wise, because they feel like, again, they feel entitled to everything. And I think struggle, dude, like I've mentioned before, is just something that I think you need in order to carve out your character and really prioritize your life correctly. Because if you don't have struggle, then everything's just all. If you're chipper all the time, you're just gonna forget, and then you're really gonna like lose sight of what real problems are, and you're gonna lose sight of your gratitude.
Well, that goes into what I was talking about about the whole North Korea thing. So Jordan had a podcast where he interviewed this I forgot her name. She was a defector from North Korea. She escaped, but she wrote a book, and she was describing what life was like in North Korea, and then when she escaped and her being exposed to vast different cultures outside of North Korea. And dude, like they were eating bugs because they had to. Like they have, well, they announced that they had nuclear weapons in their country, so they're sophisticated to some degree. Yet their whole population of people, for the most part, are living at a point where they have to eat critters outside to survive. But that's the life they know, and the life that the North Communist, I forget what they call them, the regime or whatever, make it believe that the rest of the world outside of their walls is even worse. And so these people don't know any better. And so
that's the bullshit that they're fed on the daily.
She called their
as an incentive to stay.
Yeah.
It's not like they can leave if they wanted to anyway.
Because you're going to get killed. Right? You're going to get killed if you leave.
That's crazy.
And so she says it's quite literally the largest and longest running concentration camp the world has ever seen. And she was like, she mentioned there's 3 different types of prisons. I don't know if I don't remember or if she never really got into the third type, but she named 2. One was like crime for one. But there was one that people are born into. And that is if like your great grandpa did something that was against the North Korean party, then you were imprisoned, your family was imprisoned, and they're going to allow you to, procreate, but you'll be born into that prison and you're going to die in that prison because your whole family lineage now is tainted.
That was kind of tied into, remember when I was discussing the book with you that I'm reading, Ending Mental Illness, that part on back in like the 1800s, if they knew that you were losing your mind or something like that, they would deem you like a witch, or they would deem you like crazy. That's the title they would put on you, and they would lock you up in these asylums. And anybody else in your family that had that history, or not even that had that history, because you were titled crazy, anybody else in your family, they would take them too, just by association, and lock them up too.
Yeah, and then so like people are born into this prison and never allowed to leave. That's the only life for life, right? Yeah, that's the only life they're ever gonna know.
So if they procreate, their children are going to be.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And exactly going on forth, and so there's a lot that she discusses, but we'll just get through quickly. So
go ahead.
No, because there was a lot, dude. There was a lot to digest, and you can hear the emotion in this. And she's probably in her late 20s now, and so she escaped. Her sister.
How did she escape? Did she say?
I don't know. There was I guess their version of the Rio Grande River. So like they crossed some river to get into China. But she said like when she was escaping, she wasn't escaping for freedom because she didn't know what freedom was. It was a term that had no meaning to her. She'd never heard it before.
She was escaping just because of fear.
Food.
Oh, food.
She says, I know there's food in China. I got to go there. I don't want to worry about eating. And so that's why her mom and them escaped. Once they eventually crossed this, whatever river it was, or body of water, could have been a lake or a slight ocean, I don't know. They crossed some body of water. The first guys that contacted them knew that they were defecting for North Korea, and she was 12 or 13 at the time. And the guy that contacted them told her mom, I want to have sex with your daughter. And she's like, well, she's a child. She's 13. I don't care. And her mom's like, okay, take me instead. And so he did. And so she watched her mom get raped. First contact she had with another person outside of North Korea.
Damn, dude, the luck of that, right?
Right. Well, I guess I don't know if they patrol that area looking for people to defect. So
they knew that maybe, hey, they're trying to sneak over. I can use this against them.
Right. So then they went back to this guy's house or whatever. And they unclothe them and they basically rape their body. And they get sold for slaves. And so her mom went to some
Like
farmer.
trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. So she went. He kept her. He sold her mom, right, to some farmer or whatever. Because I guess they said human trafficking is a big thing in China because the population is so huge. You know, 1 billion people, 2 billion people, whatever it is. But that, I think in the 60s or 70s, they enacted the one kid rule, where if you had a kid, and they only kept males, predominantly males. So they said there's like,
Yeah, the ratio's way off.
yeah,
ain't it?
I think she said there's like 30 million guys in their lifetime will never experience having a partner because they're just, the numbers don't add up. And so trafficking is a big thing. So those guys can get, you know, their sense of marriage or sexuality or whatever it may be. And so she said that, well, she was eating, and then they both said, well, we don't want to be slaves. Like, what the hell? We escaped from over there to, and he goes, all right, cool. That's cool. You don't have to be slaves, but we'll just send you back to North Korea and then you'll be killed over there for defecting. And then she goes, well, and they're likely going to be prostitutes. And as a result of that, she goes, well, you know what? I get food here. So that this is prostitution and slavery is better than, than going back to North Korea. And I'm like, this happened in 2007.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
And I'm like, 2007, this chick was sold as her mom and her were sold as slaves. I'm like, and it makes a lot of the stuff that we're saying are problems here seem so trivial. You know, like there's current day, and I mean, this is still going on, you know what I'm saying? But just, I was in high school being an idiot, running around having fun, and there was a chick that was out there being slaved and being a sex slave.
Yeah, and then we're in high school crying over our girlfriends because they broke up with us. And it's like, dude, you got to remember, I mean, when you're old enough now to be conscious of this type of thing, it's like, dude, this stuff is going on in your lifetime, like hell on earth by no stretch of the imagination or understating that's, you know, that's saying, like, really, like, for these, that's hell on earth, bro. Like, and that's going on in our
To this
lifetime,
day.
and we're over here complaining because this guy at Starbucks messed up my drink.
Or just any of the problems like that we're complaining about socially, in my opinion, you know?
But I'm saying just though, yeah, just in general, like, dude, you have to remember and keep this in your head. Like, there is some messed up shit going on in the world right now, and we're over here completely losing sight of that. Like, it's almost as if we're in the same position as them, and we're completely oblivious to the fact that there is something else out there called torture. You know, like, we're oblivious to, you know how they're oblivious to, like, oh, what is freedom? You know, they don't know that. And we're oblivious to the fact that there is such a thing as freedom being taken away from you. We're living in our own little bubble. You know, we forget, because if we stepped outside of these walls, and because a lot of people say this when they travel and they see third world countries, they come back here and it's just like it's a whole different perspective.
Yeah,
that's for a reason.
It puts it into perspective for you. You know, like,
exactly.
I'm very fortunate to have been born in where I was born, or my parents migrated from where they were to here, so I can experience the pursuit of, you know, life, liberty.
Now, do you, keep? Is this something
happiness?
Is this something that you keep though, like in the back of your head all the time? You have to, right?
You know, honestly, man, it's like I would like to credit myself with being that kind of individual, but when I hear it, like, it was extremely eye-opening. I'm going to get to the part that even applies to us now. It's later in her life, but so then she's tired of this life, and she's maybe 14, 15 at the time. She tells the guy that owns her, like, I'm going to kill myself. And he's like, well, like, why? He's just like, this is not what I wanted, and I'm just kind of over the whole thing. And she was depressed about her mom being sold. And I guess the way it works is, like, whoever sells them, it's like wholesale. So it's cheaper when you buy it first. But they're like an asset that appreciates. So the next guy that buys them from them, they get to sell that slave for more money. And so he knew that she was depressed about her mom being sold. So he went to that farmer and had to pay more money than what he sold him for initially to buy her back. And then she goes, you know what? He brought my mom back to me. Like, I'm good with that. I'll stay alive, you know? And then I guess at some point in time, they escaped from there to Mongolia, I think she said it was. But she said the terrain that they had to go through was like negative 20-degree weather. It was in February. And they told her to pack light because it's a massive trek. And she said they didn't pack appropriately for the winter because they were trying to keep it light, like they were instructed to. They didn't know where they were going. They just said, keep heading this direction, keep heading north, and you'll eventually come across some barbed wire fences. And I think she said she went with a group of like 7 people and a baby. And everyone made it. But then she said when they got there, they were interrogated for like 3 or 4 months to make sure they weren't spies from North Korea. I guess that happens. They were searching them for tattoos and all the kinds of stuff that would indicate they were spies.
Was there like torture involved?
She didn't mention torture. She just meant that it was a long, very tedious process where they were like trying to validate that they weren't spies, you know? So once they get to that conclusion, hey, you guys are just, you know, slaves that ran away from North Korea and then China, I guess they allowed them asylum that they were, and she eventually ended up going to South Korea. And then they go through like a similar process. And she goes, but when we're done with that, they put you into like a school. And the school basically teaches you about modern life. Like she was like, I had no idea what an ATM was. I had no idea what this was. And so they're teaching you all these terms that I never would have encountered.
You're basically a child.
Basically as an adult, yeah. And so, and she's sitting there like, wow, like these guys, like they have lights. That's how she said she escaped to China. She just went where the lights were. Because they, like Jordan mentioned it, if they were to take an aerial shot from space of that region of the world at night, South Korea, China, they're all brightly lit, and North Korea's black. Like, there's no power there, except for the few probably governmental structures that exist. And so she goes to school. She does, like, basically K through 12 in 1 year of schooling. She says she basically became a slave again. She just put her to her studies because her dad wanted her to be educated. And so she gets a degree there in China, whatever, gets an opportunity to come here to the States. And she gets accepted into University of Columbia, so a really prestigious school in New York. And then so Jordan asked her, like, what was your experience like? And she goes, a waste of time and money. And as a professor, he was like deeply impacted by this. He goes, I'm so sorry that was your experience of one of the best schools you can go to. He goes, do you have like one course, maybe one professor that kind of resonated well with you? And she sat there quiet. She goes, well, and he goes, if you had to think about it that hard, you didn't. He's like, because I can think of 8 professors for my time when I was going through undergrad and in his pursuit of his PhD, where I can think of they had a profound impact on my, you know, scholastic career. And so he basically apologized to her, like on behalf of, you know, the schooling system, like that they failed you. And he's been in previous podcasts talking about the decline of the university and how the humanities section, like philosophy and things of that nature, were the fundamental cores of the university. They taught you not what to think, they taught you how to think. They brought you into touch with a bunch of, you know, historical philosophers, great teachings, you know, great way to shape your mind to being able to think on your own. And he goes, in his perspective, they've gotten away from that. He's like, and I've seen it as a professor. And he's not, I mean, he taught at Harvard. You know, he knows what he's talking about. He teaches at the University of Toronto. Like he's done his fair share of teaching. And he says that he's noticed in his time doing that was no longer a message. They were basically, in some ways, exposing you to a different form of propaganda and teaching you what to think and how this is how the world is, not being able to utilize critical thinking and for you to take in vast amounts of information and then for you as a person analyze it and then make your own determination of what that information means. And so to get to like the crazy part about it, she said that there was particular courses that she took where the professor emailed her saying, hey, I know more or less about your background. You don't have to partake in this particular section of the curriculum. And she said she was upset about that. She was like, I was a slave. I escaped from North Korea. I escaped from China. And you're telling me some words on a book are going to be the thing that are going to trigger me and do me in? She goes like, how dare you tell me that kind of stuff? Like, from all the crap that I've been through, you think this is what's going to make me, you know, upset? She said she had a woman professor, some dude held the door open for her after one of the lectures. And the teacher's like, you're giving that man power over you. You know, you're submitting to male dominance. Like, don't ever let a man hold the door open for you. She was like, it was just courtesy. She goes, and I've done it for other people too, you know? And then so when she was in class and they would go into lecture and she would sit there and ask questions that didn't go with what the teachers or the professors were instructing, she says she started to notice her grades would decline. And so she felt that it was just best for her to keep her mouth shut so her education wasn't impacted by it. When she kept her mouth shut, her grades were improving. She goes, and I felt like I was in another form of slavery. They were telling me what I could say, what I can think. I couldn't voice my opinion. And she goes, and I feel that the United States is one of the last places that fight for freedom for people. And she goes, and if they succumb to that, the world is gonna be a worse place to that. And this is coming from a foreigner that came from a totalitarian regime, and she's saying that she can see the United States falling victim to this victimization card thing, and we're gonna lose our foothold in the world as far as influence goes. And she goes, when there's no one left to fight for freedom, no one's gonna know what freedom is, because I didn't know what freedom is. When I escaped, I wasn't escaping for freedom. I was escaping for food. And only then, when I left, did I realize that chicks can wear jeans. We could do our hair. We could wear our makeup. Like, I didn't know what none of this was ever in her mind when she was in North Korea, because they basically, she said they took words out of the language. That way they would never be exposed to it. And she goes, when there's one group of people left that are fighting for this for everybody else, when that disappears, no one's gonna know that slavery or freedom was ever a thing.
It's almost like that's super interesting that she came over here and that she noticed that we were falling into that, and it's like freedom is an endangered, like, if it was a thing, it's an endangered species.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like if we let this go any farther, it's going to become extinct. And I feel like that's exactly that sums up what everything that's going on right now, because it does, in a way. Even though we're not physically being tortured, we're in a mental prison, and this is what it's doing to us. And it's a big part of the reason why we're headed in the direction that we're headed. And for somebody to come from a life of legitimate torture to come over here and say that's got to be a very bad sign. That's got to, if that doesn't wake you up, what is going to wake you up?
And that's what, to me, the concerning part was. Like, okay, so I'm not just being super anxious about this. You know, we're gonna do this. Is like somebody that came from that environment was exposed to different types of cultures in her short. I think she's like said late 20s now, exposed to lots of different cultures and early in her life, and then to get to here and to say, like, I fear that if the American people don't get it together, they're gonna fall victim to that, and there's gonna be no coming back. And then it ties into another podcast I watched from Jordan. He's been putting out some good content lately, man.
Yo, what was the name of this one? Like, do you remember the get? Oh, you don't remember her name, huh?
No, but it'll say like North Korea, like in the title.
That, because dude, now I want to go listen to that.
Dude, so then there's another one that he interviewed, because he's trying to get more political figures on his podcast, because he's all, I feel with, and I believe what he says, because he's a clinical psychologist, and I'm sure he says in a long form discussion, it's very hard for you to remain, your true self is going to come out in that long form discussion. He's like, so it gives politicians the room to actually express what they're talking about. And he interviewed this senator from Utah who is a Republican, and had him talk about the Constitution and whatnot. And if you heard this guy speak, bro, it is crazy, because especially coming from a politician. Now, he could have been lying, but if what Jordan said is true, in that amount of time, we would have solved the BS. You know what I'm saying? But basically what he was saying was, government is force. It's a necessary force. It keeps us from stealing from each other. It keeps us from, killing each other and hurting each other. He goes, but the way it was originally designed was the power came from the people to the federal government. It's of the people.
Like, you work for me.
Basically, like, we're the ones giving you the authority to do what you do. And there was a bunch of checks and balances put in place to never let one aspect of the government reign supreme. Checks and balances, we learned about that going through school. And to hear it coming from a politician is crazy, and he says, as a politician, there's too much power in the government. And he cited a particular law or thing that took place in the 30s, so during the Great Depression, because basically he said that the federal government was supposed to be in charge of global trade, declaring war. It was like 5 basic things. I forgot what the other ones were. He's like, and that was basically what everything else should be disseminated to the states, handle it at the lowest level possible, basically. And in the 30s, they passed something at the Supreme Court level where that basically opened the door for them for the federal government to have a lot more overreaching power. And it tied into that that South Korean chick, because he says, like, dude, the federal government has too much, and the people need to take it back, and it's going to be hard, but it needs to happen. And this is coming from a politician.
And it's like, dude, but how? Where do you start? And I feel the masses, this type of stuff that he's talking about on that podcast needs to reach the masses, and because you got to ask yourself that question. Okay, I have the question now that I need a very specific answer to. I solved for Y. How do I get X, right? And it's how do you get this out to the people to get your power back?
Yeah, but to me it's crazy because, like, that's coming from a politician where he stands. I guess he carries a copy of the Bill of Rights in his wallet.
Yeah, that's like one of those situations where it's a group of bad people, gangbangers or whatever. If one of them speaks up and says, "Hey, I think maybe it's time to, I think we're doing too much here." If one of those guys is saying it, it must be bad. The fact that a politician is recognizing that we're in a bad situation has to say something, right?
Yeah, and he says there's like a lot of red tape that goes on with how they're able to navigate and whatnot. But I guess he said right now the issue that we're having is, just politically speaking here in the States, is that through that thing with the Supreme Court, that it gave a lot of power to the federal or to the executive branch of the government, which is the president and all that nine. And he goes, there's too much. I don't want to use the word faith, but the president shouldn't be that influential. In fact, it was set up that the legislative branch was the ones that make the laws. They're the ones that do it, but it somehow shifted where it got squeezed up to the president.
Yeah, so we're relying too heavily on his say so.
Yeah, and that takes us back to aristocracy, with like kings and queens.
Well, it's borderline democracy.
And so he's
right?
saying democracy is like
it's borderline dictatorship.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. You basically, like, the more we allow this to happen, the closer it gets to that, which is what
we're inching towards it for sure.
Yeah, we're one inch at a time. We're moving the ball forward. Is what it seems like, because we're relying too much on the federal government.
But what it seems like is like what we're being fed. I feel like the bullshit we're being fed is designed to make us feel like it's okay.
Yeah,
just and exactly almost kind of mirrors what North Korea is doing. Not to that degree, but it's like. Slow, like you said, slowly inching towards that, but they're like slowly adding a little bit to it each time until they eventually stacks up.
And I don't know if it was another podcast I was
sneaking
listening
it
to
in there
with Jordan and somebody else, or if it was that same senator, but because I listened to it, it was span up for like a day or two. They were talking about how, like, it's people, it's humans that are in these government positions, and wherever you have somebody in a position of power, they will abuse it at some point in time with what's allowed to them, And so the more you push it that way, the more likely it is for one person to start to abuse. And I think we have a lot of cases where that's the case,
They actually did an experiment on this one time. I think it's on YouTube too. They just put a bunch of people and like they're restricted to a very, very small space, right? And they're experimenting over an X amount of days, and eventually it just kind of happens itself where one person just kind of, the alpha becomes in charge, and eventually that person, because they have too much power, starts abusing that authority just within a little commune.
I heard of something similar to like that too, and I wonder if it might be the same one.
I think it's college students though that are participating in it.
It could have been. I don't remember the details, but I know that they gave a plate of cookies. They put a plate of cookies in there, and there was one for every person in there or whatever. No one was deemed a leader, but whoever assumed that role took more cookies than they gave themselves more. I think there's maybe one extra or whatever the case may be, but they took the majority of it because they felt that they were the leader, but no one was ever disclosed as the leader of that.
It just basically comes down to who had the more confidence.
I suppose, but it wasn't, okay, hey, what we'll do is there's one or two extra. We'll divvy them up evenly so everyone gets equal portions of it. It was...
So there was no general... It was just... He dictated it.
Basically. And so that just, to me, paints a picture of how we operate as humans as a whole.
We don't have a say-so. Like, dude, when they take taxes out of your paycheck, you don't get to see that it officially makes it towards whatever they're allocating it towards.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You don't get to see it. You
Like-
just assume that's where it goes.
I think Joe Rogan mentioned on his podcast, he was just like, I would like to see if they give you like a receipt.
Exactly. But it would seem like that should be the formality, right? Like you get a receipt if you're taking the money I'm working for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Because that politician mentioned, his name is Mike Lee, the senator. He was like, the government's force by nature. That's what it's designed to do. It's the way it was put in place was it was supposed to be the greater good for the people. You know, like there'll be the ones that are going to establish the laws and the boundaries so we can all respect each other's, freedoms and whatnot. But I just lost my train of thought. What did you say before that about damn it, I lost it.
No, I mean I was saying like you should be able to see like if they are taking.
Okay, yeah, yeah, thank you. So Joe
Like
had
we don't get to
mentioned-
see it.
Yeah, he's like,
We
so
just assume.
he's like, you're gonna you pay your taxes, and if you don't, they'll come take your money one way or the other, put you in jail, whatever. But what Joe was saying was like, could you imagine how much people would be upset if they were to see like a summary of where their money was going? Wait, my money didn't go, of the thousands of dollars you guys took from me, in a year, 100 of it went to where I thought it was going, and the rest of it went to no one knows. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It's like all interest.
yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And they get to do with it what they please, so
But you're saying like the fact that we're letting them have that much power over us, it's almost like just because they felt like it wasn't officially declared, like there was no general consensus saying, hey, we're gonna do it this way. They just decided within themselves, we're gonna do it this way. And that we automatically abide by those rules because
in
it's
some
written.
way, yeah. Just because, like, I'm not gonna use taxes as an example because taxes are necessary. That pays for
They are, but-
infrastructure. That pays for our national defense, which I'm sure no one here is complaining about our military presence and power. Like,
But we should be able to see.
I agree. Like, I would like to see where my money's going, even though it might be, pennies on the national scale. I would still like to see where that money gets allocated towards. To see if it's actually going towards schools or fixing roads or helping.
Well, what it comes down to is trust. You want to be able to trust the people that your life is basically in these people's hands. It comes down to trust. Can you trust these people? And I feel like they definitely have broken our trust on numerous occasions, and it's no
Exactly.
wonder why we have this conflict, and we feel like there's a divide between us and the higher ups.
So they put because before FDR there wasn't a term limit for presidents. I think he was elected 3 times. So 12 years, one guy running the country. I don't know why they decided to make it 8 years the limit, but 8 years is the limit. I think that should apply to any politician. You have people like Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, been, what's his name? The president, Biden now, was it 50 years? You know what I'm saying? Like, and at least the way it was explained to me growing up was the whole purpose of having these elected things was to get people that were from your area to represent your problems from your area into a level where it can have some change. But if you never have new people coming in, the ideas fall stagnant, because they're not addressing the people of Fresno or the Central Valley. It's what do you know being on Capitol Hill for the last 30 years, 40 years about struggle? You're making $300,000, $400,000 a year being up there, plus whatever kickbacks you're getting from lobbyists.
It's like, you remember when quarantine happened and they started showing these commercials of like Alone Together, and they would show commercials of like really rich people in their houses and like their mansions and everything, and they were like preaching like, hey, everything's gonna be good and we're gonna get through this together, and stay strong, and I know you're confined to the walls of your homes, but everything's gonna. Meanwhile, they're in this huge mansion with all this
I didn't
space.
see that because I don't watch a lot of TV, but that sounds stupid as hell.
Right?
These are the people that you would elect to be the representation of what it's going to be like.
Right? Like, if anything, put the camera on me and be like, hey, look, I got 2 bedrooms here and it's a very small space. We're going to get through this together. You know what I mean? Versus that's like saying, yeah, like exactly what you were saying, like a rich person preaching like, hey, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it, But they completely forgot what struggle was like because they've been living lavish for so long.
Well, and we won't even say that. I don't think that's fair to say that they don't know what struggle is like, but to say
No,
that
but they've forgotten. They lost sight of it.
I even think that's taken it too far. I think it's even some of that is like this person, money isn't an issue for them right now, so they can afford to hold out with not working. Whereas the majority of people don't. If they lose their job for a month or two, they're gonna start worrying about how their bills, because the bills don't stop.
Hmm.
You got people still asking, "Hey man, your rent's due. Hey man, you got your car payment. Hey man, your credit card. Hey man, your lights." Like, to me, I'm not saying that they didn't forget their struggles but I'm just saying, like, to me, it's not fair to use those as your face of that message, because like I'm pretty sure they have a lot of money put away and they could ride this out, with minimal cost. Whereas me, myself included in that, if that were the case, I would, or if we were to be locked away and not be able to work. Fortunately, I was still able to work and I wasn't impacted by it like that. But it would be, if they told me tomorrow, "Hey, you can't come to work for the next year," I would be in a world of hurt after that next check. You know what I'm saying? And there was a lot of people that were like that. And so to use like those people, those lavish lifestyles as your example is like, that's not fair, because no one, the vast majority of people aren't in that situation. That's stupid. You know?
It's like, because the image they were trying to depict was like these, like it shows like these NFL players, basketball players, like playing with their kid, and then in the background you can see like their pool in the background, and like
80 cars and
their 80-foot ceilings and everything, and they're like happy and they're laughing. But on the other side of it, people are scared in their homes, and people are foraging the grocery stores, and all the meat is gone, dude. Like on the other side of it, like that's the reality of it. Dude, I remember when everything, like, to change the topic a little bit, like, I remember it was the first time I've ever seen this. Probably the only, I hope, God willing, going to the store and doing, literally, there was no meat. Everything was up. The shelves were bare, dude. Did you ever see that?
No, but
Dude,
I think the toilet paper thing affected everybody.
No, but like in the beginning, it was more of the food. I think the toilet paper thing followed, or was it the first thing?
I don't know, but it's just one of those things where it's like, you walked in to the store and you've seen everyone doing that. Like, well, hell, what do they know? I don't. I better do it myself. And it's just one of those snowball effects where it went from, whether it be meat or toilet paper, it went to canned foods, to water, to this, to that, to this, to that. And then before you know it, no, there was nothing on the shelves.
Dude, no, like literally you would go into the store and there was nothing.
Like a movie.
All the dumb shit was left. Like all the stuff that is like, oh man, like what do I get now? Like if you were a type of person that required a very specific diet because of your health and you needed to get those foods, because if you ate, greasy foods, like your gallbladder would, and you would get really sick, What if those foods weren't available anymore? And that time there was that stuff wasn't on the shelves. And it was crazy because you didn't know when it was coming back. It was a very, very interesting time.
And to tie that all back into what we were talking about, that goes to show the greed of people, because we're talking about politicians, being greedy and looking out for themselves and everybody else. And yet here we are on that level. Well, I'm not really concerned with Mark and his gallbladder issues, but I'm going to take all the food that he needs to eat because of self-preservation.
Yeah, people weren't thinking about, hey, let me leave some for others, I mean, I experienced the opposite of greed within my family and stuff and like friends. Like I was calling and making sure that, hey, if you guys need extra of this, I got some extra, or we'll trade up something like, and it was nice to have that, like a great sense of commodity came out of that, or camaraderie came out of that. So that was nice. But on the outside, like to strangers, yeah, everyone was displaying greed.
So that means it goes back to self-preservation.
It brought out my hate again for people. Like I was saying, I was like, dude, these greedy, like everyone is just, all right, here's your true colors now. This is people's true colors, and people truly feed off of each other because monkey see, monkey do. Like, because one person like nobody really stopped and was like, hey, maybe we should just leave some hand sanitizer for somebody else, Instead, they were clearing the shelves and stuffing their carts full of as much as they can get their hands on. And
they were even doing it with recently with gas. When that pipeline was hacked, there was people like going with like 80 red containers for 5-gallon gas things filling up at the pumps. I saw one video of a guy pumping gas into a trash bag. I saw one guy, I'm glad
I didn't see this.
His bed liner was like with a tarp, and he was just openly pouring gas into his bed of his truck. And like the people were following him that were watching this, and like every time he make a turn, it would just like splash out of the
Oh my god!
And I was like, oh, cool. It's not like it's a flammable substance or anything that you're just
I know,
dumping out
right?
into the road.
I know, right? It's not like
time.
people flick cigarettes.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Just like things like that. But this is where people were a month or two ago.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I would love to say like, I'm all for the people, but then you got these idiots running around. Like these people do exist, you know. I mean, and more numbers than I'm comfortable with, you know, because when everything happened and all that stuff happened, you really got to see people's true colors, and it was an uncomfortable amount of people that were displaying these behaviors, you know. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, man, dude, people are really fucked up, you know. I was like, why does it have to be like this? Like, what is it that I mean, obviously
it's
fear based.
It's probably very, very thank you, primal is the word. Like just self-preservation. I got to continue to live. I got to, you know what I'm saying?
Survival, yeah, because
so,
back in the day, dude, like I'm talking like the day, like 1700s, like people, they had to fight for their food and they literally had to go out and hunt. And that we're talking about centuries this was going on. So some of those genetics and everything, I feel like it's rooted into our DNA.
So I'm sure a lot of it has to deal with that, but it's still like, okay, so now that you have all this gas and, you know, I don't even know where we're at right now if the gas thing was ever fixed or whatever.
I don't know. All I know is I put gas the other day and it was fine.
But I mean, this was affecting people back east.
Oh, okay.
But because I found it funny, like, oh my God, gas prices are reaching $6. I'm like, that's cute. We've been around that threshold for the last, like, since I can remember.
Yeah, we've been hovering around 4 and 5.
You know what I'm saying? For the last 10 years, it feels like, you know, so that's cute. But yeah, dude, it's I don't know. I would say just people in general, just, you know, as when it comes to these dire straits, we just forget about everybody else and fixate on ourselves. And I don't know if that's a bad or a good thing.
I think it's a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing. I think people need to help each other more.
Yeah, you know,
I think 100%.
True, yeah.
And I think that's the only way that we're going to make it through this thing called life is if we start helping each other more and developing more, less greed.
The only reason I say that is just because if I were to find myself in a similar situation, I don't want to say that and then find myself being the very person I'm criticizing.
I mean, you never know until you're in that situation, right? But you would like to think. I mean, hindsight's 2020.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times, every time, you know. But you would like to think that you would go into it with the mindset like, hey, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm going to leave something for, you know, somebody else.
The next person.
You know what I hate too is like when you get those people at the parties, like, and they offer you to take a plate and they take fucking everything.
Oh yeah.
It's like, dude, like, leave some for
the other person that wants something.
Yeah, leave some for somebody else. Like, I always like to think I'll be the last one to do that, you know? Or like when you go somewhere, and here's why I always do this. Like, I'm always the last to leave a party. Like a family gathering, I'm always the last one. I overstay my welcome because I don't want them to think that I'm just there for the food. You know how you get those people that just eat and then they take off?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you were just here for the damn cake. You know, it's like, I want you to know that I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not here for the cake and I could care less.
Yeah, there's one time that touched on the having enough for everybody. We were having a potluck for Thanksgiving, and it was my first year working at the jail. I totally spaced it, bro. I was like, crap, there's a potluck. And so I was like, well, KFC is probably the closest thing I can get to Thanksgiving-themed food, so...
Actually, that's pretty good as a substitute.
Right, so I was like, screw it. So I got down to KFC, and as I was driving there, I was just like, what am I going to get? Right, so I was like, oh, like they have those big family platters or whatever. And I was like, was that enough? Because I already know people are greedy as hell. And then instead of taking one and getting a piece of everything, they're going to take what they like the most. And I don't want the person that's the last one to get there to get the crumbs, the little crusty leftovers from the chicken. So I ended up spending, dude, like $100 and some bucks at KFC. And the people, I was like, hey, can I get that big meal you have? Okay, cool. Give us like, 10, 15 minutes. I was like, I need 2 of those. And they're like, 2? And I was like, yeah, 2. So then I had a call to work. I was like, hey, look, this is what's going on. I'm going to be late by maybe like 10, 15 minutes because they have to do this. Like, hey, take your time, whatever. They were cool with it but it was just like.
Well, you displayed the opposite of greed. You like.
No, but I just thought it was funny. It was just like, okay, I want to make sure. I don't even know if everyone still got a piece of that case, but it was just like, that was my way of trying to make sure that everyone had a little bit of something that I was bringing. But yeah, that was funny.
Oh, yeah, you were the man, bro. You came through with.
Dude, I had to call people and come outside of my car and have me grab all these bags, bro.
I mean, yeah, that's good. Like, but now you just got to find your balance. Like,
yeah, right.
You know, next time just spend 70, and I think we're on the right track. Man, dude, that was a good podcast. That was real interesting. Like, yeah, we're already towards the end now. That was crazy, and I could tell you're getting tired too.
But yeah, that was a good one. I encourage you guys again. I feel like I talk about Jordan like I know him personally, or I'm selling him like I'm getting paid to, but his content is good. Like if you go to the most recent videos within the last couple months since he's made his resurgence back into it because he was ill for a while, with each podcast he uploads, the comments are like he's getting back to his old self. He's getting better. He's getting more energetic. His mind's sharper. And dude, the people that he's been interviewing, like I said, that one with the chick from North Korea, the senator from Utah, he even told him, he's like, hey, because that guy said Bernie Sanders is one of his good friends. And he goes, and on most of the topics we discussed politically, we're the complete opposite, yet he's one of my good friends. And so he's like, hey, well, I would love to interview one of your Democratic, colleagues. Like, let them know that I'm interested in interviewing somebody. We can get somebody here. So he's not trying to give you, because they always view Jordan as like he's conservative Republican leaning. He's like, actually, I'm a classic liberal. And so I respect the fact that he's getting both sides of the table if they're willing to, partake in his interviews. That way you get the full circle, of what's going on, not just the version that people think that he wants to give you. You know what I'm saying? He tries to remain as in the middle and just get to the truth and get you to stand on your claim, So I encourage you guys to check him out. There's a wealth of knowledge, tons of information. And then the cool thing is I'm going to be buying another book from someone I'd never heard of. The book that I'm going to be buying probably when I get home tonight. It's called Freedom of Speech and Why It Matters. And it was written by the guy I was talking about from the UK in the beginning. And then there's another book about psychology that from another podcast, they were talking about just how we operate as people that another guy wrote with a PhD that Jordan interviewed. And I want to get his book because it sounds like a very interesting book to understand the way we tend to operate.
We're it's limitless the amount of topics we could talk on here. Talk about.
But like I said, I sling him like drugs, man. You guys check him out. I'm sure he'll impact you one way or the other.
Yeah. And I'd love to talk about that more on the next podcast, like human nature and behavior and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff, the psychology of it. Like I love it. I love that stuff.
It is a breeding ground for thought. That's for sure.
Yeah, it provokes a lot of thought. But anyway, man, that was a great podcast.
I agree.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. I got lost in John's his story that he told there. I was like, I forgot I was on the podcast. So I hope you guys feel the same way and feel like you're participating in it with us.
And as always, guys, participate with us in the comments. If there's something you want us to discuss, if you guys are struggling with something, brain health related, I want to remember to use that term versus mental health.
Brain health. Yeah.
Hashtag brain health, or just something we discussed today, or something completely random you'd like for us to bring it up. I'm sure we can talk about it. We're kind of versed in a lot of stuff, so
yeah,
chop it up with us on the comments, guys.
And don't ever forget to like, subscribe, and please drop a comment and share if you got any value out of these podcasts or this podcast in particular. But with that said, I hope you guys have a good week and had a good weekend. And we will catch you next Monday, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
My name is Marcus Mark.
Just John.
We'll see you guys next week.